Today, I'm interviewing a Yakima Native American. He has a lot of interesting stories about little people to share. Hope you guys enjoy.
So, my name is Lyndon. I'm not going to put my last name out there, but
It's all good.
just a little bit about me is I'm 25 years old. I've been living kind of an adventure lifestyle, traveling, and find that the kind of go to work and 9 to 5 and everything kind of got boring for me. But I totally believe in little people, Bigfoot, aliens, and that kind of taboo subject matter that not a lot of people really talk about. And it just feels like a lot of people are labeled as crazy or whatever. But I'm just going to jump right into my personal stories about little people.
Okay.
So it's like my first-hand experience. I was hunting with my grandfather, and I remember walking on a plane, and we would walk for through the hills and everywhere pretty much. But it's said that they can scramble your mind. They can put thoughts in your mind and get you lost. It's also said talking about them will attract them. So not a lot of people are willing to share their stories. But while I was hunting, I distinctly remember hearing two people talking in each ear. And I remember looking around, seeing absolutely nobody, just my brother, and he was eye distance away, and we would just sweep through valleys. But after listening, it wasn't like anything I'd heard before. It was language, and it wasn't gibberish by all means, but it was two distinct, different voices.
Was it a weird language?
Yeah, I if I were to honestly even try to do it, it would be too difficult.
I
feel
I heard them talk, I think, once. You want to hear what I heard?
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so I heard them talk, and I know some people are going to laugh when I mimic it, but I'm obviously not going to mimic it properly, but it's what it sounded like, okay? It sounded like...
Okay.
Did it sound anything like that?
No. This one was more... Okay, so where I would go hunting was on the Yakima Reservation. It's the second biggest reservation in the States, and we would sleep through different valleys and everything, but the language that I heard was way more of a distinct language.
Okay.
I remember pronunciations of S's and H's and some vowels, but what threw me off was actually hearing it in two different ears. So I did not know, and in looking around even, it was still it was right in my ear. It was like somebody speaking a foreign language, and they were just like you and I talking. But yeah, it was coming from two different directions. The weird thing after that was I had actually stepped on a snake. So I don't know if it was something warning me beforehand. The snake poofed up, and it was going to bite me, but it just crawled back, slithered into its hole. So I took it in a way as a possible warning or whatever, but that was just one of the weird things. I'm from Yakima, Washington, but right now I'm just outside of Calgary, Alberta, and I'm actually in a valley where my mom grew up. And there were so many strange happenings up here, to say the least. And the way that she would really explain it is there are otherworldly beings out there, and the biggest thing is respect. When I go on my adventures, I personally never bring recording devices. I feel like it should really be firsthand. And it feels like there's frequencies that come with phones and recording devices, and there's also a telepathic knowing of who you are as a person. So when they choose to show themselves to you, it's in a way it's in certain tribes taken as a bad omen or whatever. But while my mom was growing up here, she actually wasn't too far from the house that I'm staying at right now. But the house has since burned down, but she, ever since I was younger, was in love with Smurfs. And then she would just do word-to-mouth storytellings, and she would, during summertime, sleep with, like, the window open. And she remembers she was laying on her bed and trying to get some rest, but then she felt some tugging on the blanket. And when she had tried to sit up to kind of, like, see what it was, she couldn't move. She had no control of her body, but it was like she was, in a way, frozen in her bed. So initially she was afraid, and the only thing that could move was her eyes. And slowly she felt tugging at the end of the bed, and then something really small started walking. And by the time it had gotten to where she could see, she wasn't believing what she was seeing, but she felt it, and she knew it was there. But she described it as having big dark eyes, and it was like a greenish blue tint color, and as far as the body went, she said it was so similar to a Smurf that it was like she said it was like a troll or a goblin or something. She said it had pointy ears, a cap, and it also had this flute with it. And when the little person got closer, it actually made a point to go to her face, like right next to her face, and it poked her on the nose with its flute. And she knows it wasn't a dream. They are a known up here, and again, it's just about respect of their being.
How did she describe the hat and the nose?
She said it was made out of natural material. The nose was pointed and hooked.
Okay, so it's just like the one seen up here. And when she said it looked like a Smurf, do you think she meant like kind of like a chubby little belly kind of thing, like the Smurf build?
Exactly, yeah. Yep, she said it was like a pop belly.
Did she see the hands at all? Like, did she see his fingernails?
She hadn't gone into that detail.
Oh,
I think it was, yeah, it's just like what she had expressed word to mouth.
The ones here have sharp fingernails, like claws almost, and they have the same description: pointy ears, big eyes, hooked nose. The ones that are seen here, and often green skin. So the parallels are pretty interesting. And I'm way north in Alaska.
Yeah, that sounds pretty badass. Like, another thing is, like, you have really great content. I love that you're really putting a lot of info out there, and it is going to be hard for some people to take in, but these are tribal known entities and beings, and just like you would treat a person, you do have respect. You don't just, like blatantly disrespect or go against what they're pushing. But I feel as though my mom had and it still feels like she's really special in her way. Like, if ever I were to write a book, it would really be about her life and her struggles, because it's really shaped, like, our big family. But going back to the story, she was still frozen, and after it had poked its nose, she said it looked at her in like a kind of like a "they do exist" expression in its face. So I don't know what kind of I don't get what it was trying to show my mom, but it was kind of just like making sure my mom was real, like poking her in the nose. So after it had done that, it walked back down towards the end of the bed, and she remembers feeling the pressure of it actually jumping off of the bed. And she said it was about 4 inches, like from head to toe. And shortly after it had jumped off of the bed, a couple of seconds went by, and then she regained control of her body. She was so scared at what she had just seen and terrified, and she knew that the door was open, so she was in fear of it going towards her sisters or going to the family or anything. But her being brought up here, like, she was born in Yakima, but then she moved up here for a majority of her upbringing. So she went from like totally different regions. Like, the topography is similar in ways, but there's different trees, different ways of life, different indigenous foods and everything. But her dad is he's since passed, and I hear so many great, amazing stories about him and his like skills in hunting and everything. But there were times where he would go deep, far back in the woods, and he remembers there was a clearing in a hill, and in traveling up the hill, he had come across this small village, and they would get on horseback and then travel way deep into the mountains. But after finding the hill and finding its village, everything was gone. There was remnants of a really recent small fire. There was a longhouse section. And there's also, like, on a separate occasion, been, like, they found a small teepee that was about 3 feet tops. And
wow.
Me thinking of the different sizes, like, there is different, like, just like there's different races of people, there's different entities out there. The last story, well, I guess second to the last, was, okay, I just gotta word this. So deep in the woods, and this is like the Canadian Rocky Mountains. So there's all kinds of bush, all kinds of wildlife and everything. But my mom's dad, who I guess would be stepdad, but native, you know, everybody's mom, dad, cousin, everything, all that. But she went with her dad, and they went deep into the woods, and he showed my mom this place on a hillside where when the light hits at a specific time, the light shines into this opening, and there's no way a person could fit inside of this cave, but there was just a tiny slit where you could peek into, like, with your eyes, and she's seen cave paintings, handprints, deer, buffalo, and it was one of those surreal moments where my grandfather just let her know, like, you don't show some Wasijus or other outsiders what is going on deep in the woods and what is out there, because in a way it's kind of a constant questioning of why this, why do they do this, why do they do that, and it eventually gets to the point where humans have already done so much to everything, tampering with wildlife. There's so many extinct species going on. There's so much going on. And it is kind of scary to think about the pace of which people move and can destroy. Like, that isn't the intention. But in that, she instilled in me, like when I go on my adventures. Personally, I go for the first-hand experiences. So I don't, like, when I go on hikes, I generally have a spot that I leave my phone and everything, and I'm just present in the moment. And it feels like that's when some pretty awesome stuff happens. But the last story about the little people is there was this man on the Yakima reservation, and he, this was, I think, about 20 years ago, so it's been like an old tale and like word to mouth, but there was a man, and he never believed in Bigfoot or little people or anything. But when he made it to the reservation, he was exploring, and like for whatever reason, he got lost, and he was in the woods for 3 days. And while he was in the woods, little people actually gathered around him, and he was at a point where he was like curled up underneath a dried riverbed. And in a way, my mom said that they were all making fun of him because of his inability to conceive that there are other beings out there. But yeah, there's a couple other stories here and there. But
did he see them?
Did
he see them?
Oh yeah, there was. He said a whole tribe of them.
Were they like the goblin things, like your mom saw, or what?
No, these ones were brown and they were bigger, but they were still like I would say about a foot long, or like a foot tall.
Uh-huh.
But they sat around him and they were pointing and laughing and throwing like pebbles at him. And there's a religion on the Yakima reservation that is Shaker, and it's a mix of Catholicism and the native song and prayer. And when they get called in, there's generally something traumatic has happened, like seeing Bigfoot. A lot of times it will scramble a person's mind. Staring into its eyes are said to be pretty bad because they have that effect on people. But yeah, he was preyed on for like night and day because they almost completely drove him mad.
So, what are you talking about when you said looking into their eyes is bad? What do you mean?
Like, so it's in a way, I think, a shock factor that goes into seeing something and believing it. And a lot of people that have, like the stories that I've heard, it messes with them. Like my grandfather, he's seen one in a rear view mirror of a car, and he's been in the bush, like living weeks at a time, camping, months even, and seeing it in the eyes directly, he had nightmares. He would wake up screaming, and it was like it shook him to the core, really.
So you think it's like so unbelievable and amazing that it like blows their mind and it like changes their life, like shocks them so hard because they're real?
In a way, yeah, but I think it's like a kind of reality factor where I think they can knowingly choose to do so. So I think it kind of depends on the person and where you are in your heart and mind and where you are in life. Like it seems like when you're younger, you're way more open to so much, and in turn, there's more that is shown to you. Mm-hmm. So like kind of what got me interested in all of this taboo stuff was actually visiting family down in Montana. And I was about 7 years old playing along a creek bed. And I had wandered a bit downstream. And I remember I heard this commotion, like a crack. And when I looked over, I seen this giant brown arm. And I'm sure it was watching us on the river, and I think it was Bigfoot. But it gets a little trickier because when it released the branch swung up, and I remember seeing it stop. But then shortly, like maybe 2 seconds later, there was a giant golden eagle that flew directly out of the same tree. So since that moment, I had always thought, like, was it a shapeshifter? Was it Bigfoot? Does Bigfoot have the ability to change its form?
I think honestly, they can.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I believe it.
But
yeah.
But I think maybe not all of them, but you know how some humans can do that? I think some Bigfoot can, but I'm not sure, like, 100% of them can do it. I think maybe some shaman Bigfoot or some Bigfoot with gifts can do it, but just like some humans could do it, you know what I mean?
For sure, yeah. And well, the way I see it is kind of like they are so connected with the land, whereas like we get our information from technology and computers and everything. It's like an instant gratification. And we've lost a lot of the medicine in the nature. Like if you place a millennial that is native in the woods, how many of them are going to know which foods to gather and to collect? But I do feel like they know medicine, and that's what really kind of helps them in so many ways with cloaking themselves, with getting away so quickly. But I do feel like the little people are totally on a different level. It feels like Bigfoot is like a person. It isn't an animal. They have names, feelings, languages. It's all known. But when it comes to little people, that's where I find your channel so fascinating, is you're talking about it and you're putting it out there. And it is so cool to hear from other tribes the sightings, the respect factors. It's pretty cool. I appreciate your work, man.
So I appreciate it, dude. Thanks. Have you heard anything about portals or little people with where they live or anything like that from your culture?
I know that they just disappear. They can show themselves to you, but I think it depends on the person. As far as portals go, I personally haven't seen or heard stories of it. They just disappear. Like you had explained that they move like a hummingbird, and I believe it. But from the stories that I hear, it's just they're there 1 second and then they're gone. They can go behind a bush and completely disappear. But as far as actually seeing a portal, I haven't heard firsthand any of those stories.
When you say only certain people can see them, what do you mean by that? Like clairvoyance?
I think clairvoyant in a way. Like if you are at peace in your mind and heart, and you are open to what hasn't been constructed since day one. There are so many human constructs that I feel make people sheep. It blocks out the what ifs and it tells you to grow up. But I'm not one of those people, and it seems like with children it happens. Upon doing some of my own research and like asking questions and like going to school and talking about it, I was raised in the city and there's a lot of like Hispanic communities. But when I ask them about little people, they say, "Oh, you mean like house trolls?" And I'm like, "What do you mean house trolls?" And they have stories of like actually having a troll that would visit like my one friend, and she remembers seeing them, and they would sometimes help her clean up, or they would just do little things around the house where some people may think it's an imaginary friend situation, but I feel like when you're young and you're in the world, like that innocence and the connectiveness to like consciousness as a collective, it's like you're above the constructs in a way.
You know what I think?
It was interesting. What's that?
I think little kids, when they see them, they're more likely to talk about it because they don't care. But because I met a lot of adults who've seen them, because it's accepted here that little people are real. And a lot of even elderly people still see them. My mom's seen them like 2 years ago, and her elderly friend's seen like 8 of them walking. But I also don't think they're all annoying, because I met a lot of people who've come up on them, and the little people didn't notice they're there. And then when the little people noticed they're there, they freaked out and took off. Like, "Oh, crap, people!" And they start running.
Oh, shit.
So
that sounds cool.
So they're definitely not all annoying, because I've heard many stories of people surprising them and then they run away. Like this dude was in really good shape. He's an elder now. He's telling me about how he came across a little green man. He's walking. The little green man was looking at the ground while he was walking. He didn't notice him. And then he walked right up on it, and he was like shocked. The human was shocked, and then the little person looked up. It got startled. It jumped, and then it started sprinting away. And the dude started chasing after it, and he couldn't keep up. It was way too fast.
Wow, dude, I wonder if that's a time thing or a medicine in their way is being able to transcend what we perceive as time, because legs that small, I mean, it would have to be moving like a chipmunk. So there's sometimes corny movies where, like, okay, let's say Twilight, for instance, where they make vampires look like they're running fast and they have like images behind them. Was it like that, or was it a solid form?
He said it was going like 30 miles an hour. He's running like 20, the guy. So he was in good shape. He was running pretty fast. He's in really good shape, running shape. But the little person was just a little, like 10 miles an hour faster than him. He just couldn't keep up with it. It's too fast.
That sounds pretty cool, man.
And there's other stories of like they're drifting down the river, and they're being quiet. They're just chilling in their canoe or whatever, and then come around a bend, and there's little people chopping up a caribou, and they're quartering it up and packing the meat. And then someone makes a noise, and all the little people look, and they jump into the bushes. They just take off, and they leave their meat there. So they're definitely not. They're not all annoying, and adults see them too. So it's not exclusive to kids. I think a lot of times, like a lot of I shouldn't say white people, a lot of Western people who are city folk, they'll see something like that, and it's so weird and stupid sounding that they'll never tell anybody, because it makes them sound crazy or they feel crazy.
Yeah, dude, that makes sense. I mean, it's like you just get labeled as no, you don't know what you saw, or no, you're crazy. Yeah, but that's really interesting. I'm curious as to the topographies and their life like style. Like they do have language but it's like being able to see them is one of the reasons why I really did come up here. It's like my mom had filled my head with stories, and she remembers like looking out at night, and she would see lights that come from the inside of a tree. It's like a light just forms, and then it travels through the woods, and then it'll go to a different tree, and then the light will be absorbed into that tree. So there's so much weird. Yeah, and like just things that can't be explained, and that's one of the reasons why I really did want to come up here, and I'm utilizing it as best I can with the weather getting better. I'm taking trips into the woods, and I'm just kind of keeping an eye out for things. I know which like which direction there's kind of wolves or cougar, and I have dogs that stick around with me, but in my recent going out, there's been, from what I've seen, tree structures, but one of the knowns is like Bigfoot always have a sentry, and there's always one watching, like when you don't expect it. But yeah, I would say that's pretty well most of the little people stories that I've heard.
So you think little people are more advanced than Bigfoot?
I feel like they're worldly. It feels like they're otherworldly. Like they are not talked about. They're considered a myth, but I think that their powers and their medicine behind them is really for the planet. And it feels like they're the protectors of the planet. So as much as they stay away from people and keep to themselves, I think that's the best and smartest thing they can do for themselves. It does feel like, for me, they are mischievous in a way. Like, sometimes they'll just do things to mess with people and laugh at it. Like, they're not malevolent beings, but it's said, like, you don't go into the woods by yourself, and you don't talk about them when you're by yourself.
The term troll comes from them because they like to mess with people. They laugh. They think it's hilarious. Some people get scared of them, even.
Yeah, and I've had some instances like that where it's like, sometimes I call it a glitch in the matrix, where I redo something or something gets lost and I find it in the most unusual way that shouldn't be there. But in a way, I think them having that ability, though, to kind of play tricks, it's like they laugh about it, and it's, in a way, good fun. But if I feel like they can sense a bad person or somebody who doesn't believe or somebody who's disrespectful, it's like they can scramble your mind and get you lost in the woods.
I'll tell you a story from here.
Oh, yeah, dude. Go ahead.
So, a couple of hunters, native people, were way out in the country, and they met a little person, a little green man, and he was talking to them in a new bat. And the little person told them, you don't want to run to my brother. My brother hates people. He hates humans. He'll kill you if he sees you. And there have been people in St. Lawrence Island who mysteriously ended up dead, like something killed them. And this one guy, I heard a story that he found something that the little people wanted, but he didn't want to give it back to them, so they killed him. They shot him with an arrow. So they're not necessarily, I think they're like people. They can be mean, they can be nice, and some of them will murder you if they don't like you, and it depends on the region you're in. Some areas, the tribes are nicer, and other areas, they hate people. They'll kill anyone on sight. You know what I mean? Like in Honduras, they talk about the little people, and there's a hill where you're not supposed to go because they're mean, and anyone who goes in that region goes missing. And it's the same in Samoa. I have a friend who's Samoan. There's an area where there's a doorway into a mountain where they live, and if you go in that region, in that area, you'll start to get disoriented, confused. And if you look at my other videos, I talk about electromagnetic energy and how it can make people have disorientation and confusion. And that's a common symptom with a lot of these encounters with UFOs and little people and stuff. And the people, if they survive, they're super confused and super lost. They don't know where the hell they are. They find them disoriented. Otherwise, she's had friends that tried to go there, thought they could make it, and they were never found, never seen. No one. A lot of people just completely vanish. So they're not all nice.
Oh, and they must have places. Like they must have. I like hearing the stories about how they would jump into the ground, and there's no tunnel or no hole or anything. That makes me think that they can go to a different dimension, or they can go.
I've heard 2 stories like that where they saw the hole that they jumped into. So one of them was, if you watch the video Green Goblins that I made, one of my friends from St. Lawrence Island, he saw one and it didn't know he was there, but then when it realized he was there, it ran away, and then a black hole with a weird glow opened on the ground, it jumped into it, and then as soon as it went through it, it snapped shut. And then I met another person who saw a little person, and she said that it whistled, and then a hole in the ground opened, and it jumped into the hole, and then it whistled again, and the hole shut. So,
wow, man. So that's like that's different.
So it can look like, if you don't see the hole opening, it can just look like they just jumped into the straight ground. I'd understand that, but a lot of old stories say that a light will appear on a rock or something, and they'll go into the rock, and it will be their doorway, some kind of stone. But I don't know if it requires a stone. And I also met a guy who encountered skinwalkers, like dogmen. And he was cussing at them because you can hear Navajo chanting curses, like your house will burn, your horses will die. They're chanting in the desert. And he pulled his gun out and he was like, "Come face me, you cowards." And when he did that, 2 dogmen came directly out of the flat ground. Like a little hole appeared that just rose straight up. And they're like 8 foot tall, and they just stared him down, and he backed off. He tried shooting him, but his gun wouldn't fire.
Wow, man, that's intense.
So the ground travel, I've heard multiple different things about it. Even my ex-girlfriend, she was out in a plane going to St. Michael, which is a village near here, and she saw a dude that was solid black. He looked like a man, and he was wearing a weird hat, like a hat. And she was watching him like, what the hell? This guy's like really dark black. And then it looked up and it noticed the plane and it just melted into the ground.
Wow, dude, I totally believe in that. I just going to share an experience that happened last year, and then I'll kind of explain my thought behind it. But
all right.
Me and my mother had pulled around our block, and we were just about to pull into our house, and there was this woman that was walking down the street. But as me and my mom drove past her, we noticed that she had eye shine. And that is only found in predators. And I know, like, in certain, like, cameras, you can capture the red eye glow. But this eye glow was like a bright yellow. And to my understanding, deer have a green tint, but a predator, like a big feline, would have something that's yellow. So after we drove by, me and my mom just looked at each other, and she was like, her eyes, and I was like, it was that profound moment where as soon as we had parked the car, and she was just right across the street. But in getting out of the car, I went on my mom's side, and I was walking her in, and I have pretty good hearing. The only place that this woman could have went was into an alley, in which case she would be walking on gravel, and I could hear that, like I do pay attention to what's around me and everything, but she was nowhere to be found. And then in speaking with my mom, it was just like the way that we both felt about it is the veil of the unknowing and our reality is getting thinner. Whereas before, it's like those dark beings would have to shape into an animal or shape into something to get closer to humans. This showed itself, and it wasn't like I wasn't fearful. Like that's one of the biggest things I was taught growing up is you do not be afraid of anything in the woods, and you compose yourself, and you. If you feel like an ugly feeling, then you talk to it and you just don't give it that frequency and that vibration of fear. And growing up, I've had so many weird experiences where it's like I would hear people walking around and stop right outside my door, or I would call on certain thoughts and protective thoughts that really do work in a way. But just kind of a story of like my mom growing up here. There was a really old medicine woman, and she had actually approached my grandmother, and she wanted to teach my mom everything. It's like she sensed how powerful my mom is, and she is a special woman. Like her motherly bond with all of us, it's like we're connected. She knows what I'm thinking. She knows when I'm sad. She knows when anybody's sad, really. But with having that medicine woman wanting to teach her, my mom was afraid of her because she was so young at the time, and she would have nightmares about her, and it kind of scared her. But it would have been a pivotal moment to be taken under her wing and taught everything. But after seeing that dark shadow being, it's like we prayed, we smudged, we were kind of just wondering, like, what the heck was that? But with the veil getting thinner and those entities that thrive off of fear, and in a way when you're afraid, you're inviting it in, you're giving it energy. It's like the veil's so thin that they are unafraid. They're out there. And in a way, it makes me think about religion and how you pray and how important it is that you do have that connection of the all-knowing and the source. I mean, people have different words for it, but seeing what I've seen and hearing the stories I've heard, I know how important it is to just really think those good protective thoughts and to call on your ancestors and to just be one with everything and everybody. So kind of I'll dabble into the Bigfoot side of the story.
Hold on.
Okay, yeah.
Let's, I want to do this video in 2 parts, so,
okay.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say with the girl with the eye shine, it's probably a shapeshifter or something making itself look like a human. Did she look like a normal person, except for the eyes, or what?
So the description of her is she had on a jacket, dark clothing. She had dreadlocks, and she was African American. She was about 5'10", but the whole time we were pulling up, it was just something about the way that she was walking. And when we got close enough and we drove by the eye shine, it was like she was looking in at us. And there's been other stories of shadow people and like family that have been like have seen it, and I mean, I guess those stories are really another time, but it's like, yeah, she was totally gone after that. I wish that we had kind of slowed down to really look at her, because it was kind of just driving by, and these days drugs are getting really bad. I mean, from being a child and seeing how bad it's gotten, I view it as a zombie apocalypse, really, but the meth has gotten so bad that it isn't unusual to see people walking around, but to have somebody with eye shine
that's weird.
Predatory was just, yeah, it was a trip, but yeah.
All right.
Any other questions?
No, it was good talking to you about little people. I'm gonna press stop on this recording and start a new one for the next one, okay? So
right on.
All right, man.
Yeah, dude, thanks for sharing the stories. Yeah.
Yeah, no problem. I'm gonna stop this now. We'll be on part 2. We'll talk about Bigfoot. All right, that was an interesting interview. Some of the things that really stood out to me was how people can't. I've heard this in other interviews. How some people can't handle the shock of finding out that these strange things are actually real. And as I said in previous videos, I think the reason why little people aren't talked about very much is not the fact that people don't see them, but if people see them, they don't like to talk about it. They feel crazy, they feel stupid, blah, blah, blah. So a lot of the native people don't like talking about these things because if you talk about them, attracts them. So if you guys want to meet these creatures, talk about them a lot like I do. Hopefully I attract them and I can have some cool encounters of my own. Alright guys, as promised, I'm trying to make a video a week. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Until next time, part 2 of this interview. This is Kitavitulak signing out.